Oh yeah, there's the beat. I was like, the bass didn't drop. Welcome everybody to the Daily Hi-Fi Podcast. We do this every Monday. My name is Chana. As always, with me is Joe and Mike. And today we got a special guest. His name is Joe Finn, and he is from Parasound. What is up, everybody? How you guys doing?
Hey,
What's
man,
up?
we're doing great. Hey, Joe, glad to have you, man.
Thank you so much, Mike. I appreciate it. Thank you guys for having me on. Appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Parasound is in the house.
Parasound.
I like Parasound.
I think all three of us have had the opportunity to hear quite a bit of Parasound over the years.
Hello?
Yeah.
So,
Well, I don't have any Parasound at my house, but I would like to.
I don't have any currently. Joe, I had an old school Parasound HCA. Let me see if I can remember it. Oh my goodness. This was like 13 years ago.
Yeah,
When I bought it, it was like 10 years old.
Okay.
HCA. It was a 220 by 5 amplifier. I think it was called the 220A. Does that sound right?
That sounds about right.
Yeah. So it was
That would have been
old
before my time, but
I gotcha. Very cool.
yeah.
We jump right into it. Just keep in mind that we've been talking for a while. That's why we're like, I guess we should introduce, like, what do you do over there at Parasound? All that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the Eastern Regional Sales Manager, and I take care of export sales as well. And I dabble in marketing and sales training because I've got some background in both of those things. So, in a smaller company like Parasound, as opposed to some of the big giants of the industry, you're typically wearing a lot of hats. And so, those are the four hats basically that I wear.
Nice.
Yeah, which is actually good, I think. I mean, it's nice to have a job in which you're doing a number of different things. Helps keep it interesting so that you don't get bored, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. My nose is a little bit stuffy today. I was telling these guys, I think I'm allergic to like my aftershave or something. I just cut my hair and I'm all stuffy. So don't worry about me. I'm good. It's just my nose is allergies. I haven't gone out. Don't worry about me. I don't go out.
Joe's allergic to being fresh, man. Just that's what it is.
Too fresh. I'm too fresh right now.
Looking fresh, man.
Thank you. So Joe, I saw you over there. I think it was Rocky Mountain.
Yep.
Is that it? Was it
Yeah,
either there or Expona or both?
We probably actually met at Expona. So at Expona, I hadn't even formally started working for Parasound yet. I came on board basically as a sort of just a little trial sort of a thing because Phil Jackson, who's been at Parasound for quite a while, knew me well, and I'd met Richard, but Phil Jackson, the former coach of the Chicago Bulls,
Not that Phil Jackson.
That's right.
yeah,
I know.
yeah, our Phil Jackson looks a little different from that Phil Jackson, but
A bit.
but I was basically we agreed on a wage so that I could just work the show with them, which they were appreciative just to have an extra set of hands. But it was also a sort of a working job audition so that Richard could, get a feel for would it be a good personal fit with the company, that sort of thing. So that's probably where I first met you. But we did have a lot of fun also at Rocky Mountain Audio Fest, that's for sure.
I would have hired you for sure because I did go into the room. I was in a bunch of different ones. I'm like, oh, that's kind of boring. You know what I mean? All the others kind of like they've been through. And you were up there cracking jokes and having a good time. I'm like, this guy's good.
He's all personality.
Well, I have to say it's actually really easy to work a show with Phil Jackson because he is Mr. Fired Up. And if you can't be in a fired up and excited mood around Phil Jackson, you probably should just retire.
There you go.
So he does make it easy, that's for sure.
He's always moving around real quick.
And I think also a lot of people, compared to some of the brands in the industry, maybe Parasound is, I don't know if the right way to say it is, a pretty down-to-earth brand, but it's a brand that a lot of people, I think, both have respect for, but also feel like they can afford it if they, audition a few different things and they decide on the Parasound, they can afford it. Where some of the things in our industry that are absolutely incredible to listen to, have the kind of stratospheric price points to them that make it much more difficult.
Sure.
So I think we tend to draw people into our booth who are, they're easy to get along with people, if you know what I mean, because there's a lot of just regular guys that come into the Parasound booth.
Sure.
So that part's a lot of fun too.
Yeah, I think I met you at Cedia last year in that suite. And,
That's right.
I did the video with Richard again. Those are always fun. Yeah.
That's right. And I was watching you work, and I was thinking, well, obviously this techno dad fella, I'm not even sure if I knew that your name was Sean at that point, but I was thinking, this guy's done a few videos before, because you were very engaging, and you had an easy chatter kind of thing going on, but you're also very professional. You had your gear lined up, and you had your angles down and everything. And
yeah.
so I was very impressed.
Oh, that's nice to hear.
Yeah, yeah.
That's nice to hear. Thanks, Jeff.
And Mike, you and I haven't had a chance to meet in person yet. I don't
think so. I went
Okay.
to the Florida Audio Expo
Okay.
the past 2 years. I know you were there this past year with, I think, Martin Logan. I believe you were kind of in that same booth.
This February, we actually didn't attend. Phil was there last year.
Okay. Gotcha.
And that was right, not long before I came on board.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So maybe you weren't there, but they had some of the Parasound gear in their room.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, we already got some questions coming in.
Okay.
If it's okay, I'm gonna go ahead and jump over. Matt says, would love to hear more about John Curl's designed A52 Plus. Since it stays in Class A for the first 10 watts, would this be the best amp for someone in a condo or apartments who can't play at reference levels?
Okay, so we should probably sort of break that question down and talk about both parts of it, because the first is, what does it mean for an amplifier to be operating in Class A? So there are all kinds of different amplifiers. Many, I think, if most tube amplifiers operate in Class A all the time. Probably the most common type of amplifier that's out there in the audio world is a Class AB amplifier, where you're getting Class A sort of up to a certain volume level. And then when there's a demand for a lot of current, it switches to Class B. So the sound of Class A tends to be pretty, let's say, highly desirable, because people associate the sound of a Class A amplifier with a warm, easy to listen to kind of a tone to it. And in fact, I think probably one of the biggest advantages of an AB amplifier is that it can give you that warm tone up to a certain point. But with a pure Class A amplifier, when the big crescendo from the 1812 happens, or you fill in the blank with your favorite type of music, and when you get a big surge in need for current, a pure Class A amplifier typically will sort of run out of juice at that point, where a Class AB enables you to switch over. So the question really, I think, now that we've had just a little discussion for those maybe who aren't so comfortable with Class A and Class B, the question really kind of becomes, is an A52, which is our amplifier, one of our two amplifiers that is a 5-channel amplifier and works well in home theater settings, is it people for who have smaller condos or smaller listening spaces? And I would say no, for a real simple reason. 10 watts, unless your speakers are very inefficient, can actually be pretty darn loud. I think people sometimes don't quite realize that the volume scale is really logarithmic rather than arithmetic, and so 10 watts of output can be really pretty loud. In fact, even our newest amplifiers, our JC1 Plus, operate up to about 25 watts before switching from Class A to Class B. That can be really pretty loud. So I would say that we have sold A52s and A51s both to people who are in fairly good sized listening rooms, and have more than happy results with the amount of volume you can get out of those guys. So, and if any of you three would like to jump in and make any extra comments about that, please feel free. There's a lot to be said about that subject, obviously.
I have the A52 Plus, and it's been stellar performer. Even like right now, they're powering the height channels that I have. And the A51 is powering the ear level speakers I have. So,
okay.
Even when I had the A52 Plus on the ear level speakers, they're phenomenal on like the 6 ohm. Like the Martin Logans I have, they're like the fronts are 6 ohm, the center is 4 ohm, and the rears are 5 ohms. Yep. So it's like just a hodgepodge of power going on. So it's cool that the Parasound will deliver all the power, no problem. Of course, the Denon I'm using as the front end of that. So it's really nice. And when it's 2-channel, the A52 Plus with the Klipsch RF7 threes were fantastic.
Yeah.
Like it was putting out tons of power. And like I always say, I come home And like our parking lot is on the other side of the building from like where our front door and our patio is. And my wife had the patio door open, and I parked, on the other side of the building. I could just hear Cardi B being blasted from the parking lot. I'm like, is that from my house? Like, what's going on? And she's just in the kitchen with like spatula in her hand, like dancing around. So it was pretty funny, So and at low levels, that thing is awesome as well. So it's something that's very versatile.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, I had the A52 Plus, I guess about 2 years ago when I reviewed it on my channel. And so I have clip speakers, so they're very, very efficient. And like you said, it doesn't take much to get those cranking. But I also have the RF7. So I've got La Scalas, which are really, really efficient. But then I also kind of paired those up like Chana did with a 3-channel setup. I used actually, no, I guess I still had 5 because I had the RF7 3s and then the RC64 3. So they've got like dual 10-inch woofers in them. And like Chana said, I mean, just incredible amount of clean power. Definitely a solid amplifier. So well built. Like I mentioned kind of a little bit earlier, I had an older Parasound that was probably 10 years old when I bought it. And then I had it like another 5 or 10 years after that. So definitely that's one thing I think that Parasound really prides yourself in the fact that you make amplifiers that last,
Yeah, that's been a real hallmark of Parasound. We get questions from people, sometimes with 20, 30-year-old Parasound pieces wanting to know if we still have parts. And sometimes we do and sometimes we don't. But but yeah, building an amplifier that I think a part of the value proposition of a Parasound, quite frankly, is that we want to build products that once you've purchased them will really last you a long, long time, and you won't feel the need to go out and replace them. So and I forgot, by the way, to thank Matt for that question, because that very first question was really a good one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, talking about build, another question here from Felix is Parasound built in the USA?
Thank you, Felix, for asking. Actually, Parasound is all designed here in the USA. Our engineers are in Northern California and San Francisco area, but it is not built here. And certainly, in fact, all of our products basically are built in Taiwan. We've been using some of the same factories in Taiwan literally for decades now, because I think if you build offshore, one of the biggest concerns, of course, is, are we getting the consistent quality control that we need? And so the fact that we've been lucky enough to partner with basically the same 3 factories for decades now has been very helpful to us, because there are, of course, vendors in various industries, not just in audio, who will sort of shop around for, we need to get X built. So let's talk to a half a dozen factories and see who gives us the lowest bid. Well, that sort of approach doesn't really work for us, specifically because of what we were just talking about a moment ago, that we really want the long-lasting quality. So we do not build in the U.S., but we've been using the same 3 factories in Taiwan for quite some time, and we're very happy with the results that we've been getting.
One thing I want to say about Parasound is it's one of those companies where I think it's high end in the sense where you kind of something that you aspire to have, but it's attainable. Right? Because some of the stuff that I see at these shows, you're like, wow, that's cool. Never mind.
Never happened.
You see the price, right? But these are in that range where, like, you can afford that.
Yeah. You may have to save up for a while, and it makes you appreciate it that much more,
But it's not like, oh, I need to sell my car to get this amp.
Or my kidney.
Well, in fact, I think that's really the Yamaha approach. I'm sorry, we've got a question here about Yamaha. So I had Yamaha in the brain. The Parasound approach is to listen to and audition some of the absolute best products in whichever category, be it a phono, preamp, because we have some very good ones in that category, or a preamp or an amplifier, but then ask the engineering question, how can we get as close as possible to that level, but keep the money as modest as possible? So we're totally okay with somebody saying, well, I don't think the Parasound amp is the absolute best amp. You could buy an XYZ. Well, that's okay. We like having products that are even more expensive than Parasound, that have potentially even higher performance, as long as we can offer 4/5 or 9/10 of that performance at a price level where a lot of people feel very comfortable spending. So that's really the mentality that we have for all of our products, is the best value that we can possibly build in for the money.
Yeah, and I think you guys really did something cool with your new Classic 200 integrated amp for $1,200 from Parasound. I think is that your least expensive amplifier?
There's a question right there from Jen. Is Parasound going Class D anytime soon? So
Yeah, very, very good, Joe. Thank you for pointing that out. Actually, the new Classic 200, Chana, that you just mentioned is a Class D amplifier. 10 or 15 years ago, we really weren't aware of anybody who could make a Class D module that really worked and really sounded great. Now, Class D, because of its advantages of running cool and not taking up a lot of physical space, those are some huge advantages. And now, because there are so many different people in the amplifier world who are taking a serious look at it. So we're using some modules that we're getting from a company based in Denmark, and really, really good sounding for the money. In fact, John, at the Rocky Mountain Audio Fest in October, where you guys all were at that one, I think we had people coming by our room just kind of amazed that we had a $7,500 total system, including the new Classic 200 integrated amplifier, which is only 1 U high, so there's not much to it. But people just were kind of in shock about the kind of sound we could deliver for $7,500. So we definitely are proud of taking the approach that we want to give you the most sound for the money. In Jen Kidd's question, though, is Parasound going Class D anytime soon? The way we think of it is, what's the right tool for the job? So our latest amplifier, for example, the JC1 Plus, there's no way we could achieve what we want to achieve sonically by using Class D. So it kind of depends on the price point and the result that we're trying to get to as to whether we will use Class D or not.
And just to be clear, when you say your system over there was 7,500, what was that including? Because I don't want people to get confused.
Sure. So it was $7,500 all told. We had a rack from Norstone. We had a CD player. It wasn't the Marantz. CD player. We had a streamer. The cabling, everything that was involved. It was a total $7,500 system.
I just didn't want people to think that was that
speakers and everything.
Yeah. I didn't want people to think that the amplifier that you're talking about is $7,500.
Right. No, this is the amplifier we're talking about. It's the new Classic 200, and it's a $1,200 2-channel amplifier.
Right.
And I like how it has like the bypass input right here.
That's right.
So if you wanted to just put 200 watts clean power into your mains for your, specifically your 2-channel listening, boom, you got that right in there. That's pretty cool.
Right. In fact, if you don't mind leaving that up just for a minute, Sean,
Sure.
It gives us a chance to talk about a couple different things that we like to do. So this product actually has 3 analog input and 3 digital input. One of the analog inputs is for phono, but if you're not using a turntable at this point, you can just flip that switch over on the left-hand side. Yeah, you got your cursor right on it. And you can turn it from a phono input into a standard analog input. So that really adds a lot of flexibility for, because obviously there are people who are just loving vinyl these days. Vinyl's made a huge comeback, but there are other people who didn't grow up with a vinyl collection and they're not going to invest in it. So this would give somebody like that an additional input to use. A second thing that I think is really cool about this is you mentioned the bypass input. That's really good. And adds to the flexibility of it. The third thing I think is being able to control subwoofers, from the remote control is really a nice advantage, because there are so many people who, they find a really nice bookshelf speaker that fits their budget, and okay, maybe it doesn't have the bottom end that they'd really love to have, but there's so much clarity in the range that it does have. Great. And then later on they add a subwoofer. Well, if you can control the subwoofer levels, from your remote control, that's a massive advantage. So this is, really a kind of a 2.1 approach, if you will. So,
and it says Highpass crossover there.
Right. So you can actually decide whether to do some bass management within the piece or not. You can go full range or do some bass management. So
does that mean I can adjust how low these bookshelf, let's say I have some bookshelf speakers, right? I can say limit it from what I see there, 140 down to 20?
Yes, that's exactly right. So as you know, all good bookshelf speakers, even really, really, really high quality ones, at some point, the woofers just aren't going to be able to do too much. So if let's just say that the bookshelf speaker that you picked is, sort of has a natural roll off at about 40 cycles. Well, if you're feeding that speaker full range, the woofers are going to, when they see a 25 or 20 hertz note, they're going to be trying like crazy to reproduce it, but they really can't. It's beyond their ability to do that. So you're, in a sense, bleeding off available amplifier power that you could be using and throwing it into something where, there's no return. So
that's really an awesome feature.
Yeah, it is. It is. Being able to do a little bit of bass management in an integrated amp is a wonderful feature.
Well, yeah, because most subwoofers already have that built in, right? So you can cut off the high, subwoofers, almost every powered subwoofer does that. But a lot of amps do not have a high pass.
Right.
And so that's an issue when you want to add a sub is, you need to be able to cut off those frequencies. And the fact that it's adjustable, not just straight 80 hertz or whatever, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, the new Classic 200 integrated, for somebody that has a budget, let's say maybe of let's say $3,000 for the whole system, I would say don't spend even a penny more on the amplification. Get that, because it has a really nice sounding headphone amp in it, a really nice sounding DAC. There's a lot of flexibility to that piece, and it's got 110 watts per channel. So the sound quality is really impressive for the money, and a lot of features too.
I see a lot of comments about John Curl. For those who don't know, maybe we should talk about that.
Yeah, sure.
Another one there.
Sure. So John Curl has been working with Parasound for decades now. He's a San Francisco-based guy, and in the 70s, he did some work with, I think, both the Grateful Dead and the Jefferson Airplane in terms of their recorded sound and so forth. He's worked with companies like Mark Levinson on a staggeringly good preamp that they had 30, 40 years ago now, almost, I guess. So he's actually in the Absolute Sound Hall of Fame. So if you look at well-respected audio designers, he's really as top of the pop as it gets. And so his relationship with us is that he really designs our upper end products. Many, if not most of the products in the Halo series are either largely his design, or at least he had some input on that design. So John Curl is a guy that we are very, very lucky, I think, to have such a good, strong professional relationship with. And apparently he and Richard talk at least 2 or 3 times a week, even when he's not working on a product, just because they're old friends. So we're very lucky to have John Curl in the group. And in fact, if you look at our amplifiers that have JC in front of them, a JC5, a JC1 Plus, a JC3, Junior phono preamp, all those sorts of products, those are all really directly John Curl designs.
I'm just a sucker for anything with a signature on it.
And it's gold too, right?
Yeah, here's a new one.
That little gold. Look at there.
There it is. I'm sold.
I think that's one of the things too I love about Parasound. Not only do you have great quality amplifiers that are built to last, but they just look incredible. They really do. They're really clean, but they just have this classiness to them that I really
like
really
the silver ones. The silver ones look great. Look at that.
Yeah.
I like the black, but man, they're just clean, man. Super, super incredible.
Yeah, I think design simplicity is a very good trait to have, and we really go for the simplicity. There's a lot of gear out there, and some of it looks great, and some of it looks just fine, and or at least okay. And some of the designs I look at and think, man, these guys should have hired an industrial designer. This does not look good.
Yeah, exactly.
So another question here on what to get. Debating on getting another used A23 or just saving up for an A21 or a JC5. Look at that. You got a Parasound fan over here in Matt.
Yeah, Matt Hilty, very good. So Matt, I would take it that you have already an A23 amplifier, and you're debating on getting a second one, probably for a vertical Biamp application. Is that correct? I don't know if Matt can type in a response to that or not.
There's a slight delay, so he'll see it.
Okay, yeah. Well, so for now, let's just assume that that's what what Matt is doing is he's already got an A23 and is thinking about getting a second one to do a vertical biamp. So that has a lot of appeal. Obviously, you get to continue to use your amp, and you don't have to think about selling it. If some people sort of look at selling things on the internet as a hassle, some don't. But you can keep the one that you have, add a second one, and do a vertical biamp. And when we say vertical biamp, what we mean, and thanks for Chana for dialing up the back of the amplifier here.
Yep.
So what we mean is that you can literally loop out of the amplifier, out of the right channel and into the left, so that you're using the left channel to power the mid and tweeter of, let's say, your left side speaker. The right channel is powering the bottom end. So you're using the two channels of the amplifier, not in a traditional left and right stereo application anymore, but in this, again, what we call vertical biamp. And you're getting a tremendous benefit of that, because now that back electromotive force of the woofer is not sort of muddying up anything in the crossover network. It's being really controlled completely by the one channel of the amplifier, where the other channel of the amplifier is running the mid and high end. Now, if you're going to do that, it's extremely beneficial to have an amp like, and again, thank you for leaving this image up. If you've got level controls, both for the left channel and right channel, that's a massive benefit, because you know, let's say in this case, it's a 160 watt amplifier, which of course it is. So you may not need the exact same amount of power to the woofers as to the mid tweets.
Sure.
Well, no problem. Now you can adjust, you know, relative the mid tweeter amplification relative to the bass amplification for the woofers, and yeah, this is a feature that I think is a really cool one, and pretty much all now of our better amplifiers are getting this kind of a treatment from us, because it's a really nice thing to be able to do. Having said that, you know, an A21 or A21 Plus, I should say, or a JC5, those are fabulous amplifiers. And if you can, you know, if you can afford it, and if you've got a friend or some way to sell off your A23, those are absolutely incredible amps, and you know, certainly worth the penny.
I know this is just some of the people out there. They're probably like, "Hey, these guys are just promoting." Yeah. The truth is that we really do appreciate Parasound stuff.
Yeah.
I know, Chana, you're a big fan. When we
Yeah.
talk on the phone personally, when Joe's not here, he's always bragging to me about his Parasound, this and that. So, like, you know, it's a real thing. And
like, you know, it was funny. So I had the A52 Plus first. I also have the Model 5000 from Outlaw Audio. And people are like, why don't I just get that? So what I did in my video, I called you guys first. Joe, this is, I think, before you worked there. Okay. I called, I was like, hey, can I take this thing apart and like just open up the top to show people on the inside? And it is a like the comparison between the $650 and the, I don't know, was it $2,500, something like that. Like, it's a huge difference for what you get on the inside. You know, it's night and day. And I have that video up somewhere. Maybe I can pull up some pictures. I don't know. But it's, you get what you pay for, and you get a whole lot. And I think one of the cool parts of, like Mike was saying, that it is, and Joe was saying too, it is attainable. It is attainable. It's not like that company with the like blue meters, whereas you really need to be like a doctor, like, you know, and have like a ton of money coming in. You know, it's something you can save up for and you know, appreciate once it gets there. And I always tell Joe, I was like, dude, I asked him, are Richard? You guys downplaying? Yeah, I asked Richard. Sorry, I totally blanked out. Yeah. I asked Richard, are they downplaying their wattage? And he's like, oh yeah. And I was like, oh, it's like, okay, fantastic. So I am getting more, because I don't know. It's not scientific. I just felt like it had more power. Like, just running my same music through the same speakers and then swapping out amps. Like, I think this is more than 180 watts per channel. I think so. So yeah. I just had that feeling.
We prefer to underrate the amplifiers a little bit, because anytime you get involved in a situation where a professional company is doing a review of the product, they're going to measure it. They're going to measure it 14 Ways to Sunday kind of thing. And you want them to be impressed by the fact that it's a little bit underrated rather than, well, this company claimed it was a 100-watt amplifier and we were only able to get 92 watts out of it. That makes you look really bad. So we tend to go conservative in our power ratings.
That's a BMW move with the underrating the horsepower. Alvin Cole said he just signed up for the Hi-Fi Summit. That's awesome. Thank you for that. Parasound, I hope to see you guys at the Hi-Fi Summit too. We'll see. We'll talk after this.
Yeah, we'll talk.
Rob E has a, thank you for the super chat, by the way.
Rob E's always hooking us up.
What are you asking here?
Parasound's opinion on PS Audio Sprout 100. BMW, Audi, and Benz making entry-level models, and when customers upgrade, they stick with the same brand.
I don't know that much about the Sprout. I know that it's a very affordable offering from PS Audio, but that's really all that I know about it. So I probably shouldn't comment on a product that I haven't, really investigated or taken a look at. But yeah, I mean, we tend to make pretty affordable products ourselves, and then also products that are obviously quite a bit more expensive. So
$699 for the Sprout 100.
You can buy a really nice power amp from Parasound for $350 retail. So we like the idea of making affordable products as well as, keep stepping on up, because people do like to stay. I think his point is a good one. People do like to stay with the same brand if they were happy with their entry level experience.
Which one is that one that we're talking about?
You were talking about.
Oh, the now I'm blanking on the model number.
Let's go to the website real quick.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
On it.
You're on it. Good man. It's in the Zone Master series. The Z-Amp V3, I think, is priced right around there. So
nice. This is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Very flexible amplifier, really good sounding for not a lot of money. So, and it doesn't take up much space. Yeah, it doesn't take up much space. We have a whole series actually of these Z products that are very space saving and allow you to get a lot of audio from not a lot of, physical space in your rack.
And those are all Class D, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Anything that's that compact. Yeah.
I remember, again, about the same time that I had the A52 Plus. You guys sent me the 2350.
Okay. Yep.
Back up one, Shauna.
Yeah. The 2350 is a great amplifier.
Yeah, there you go. It was surprising because, at that time I was still kind of like, really a Class D, holy cow, dude. I mean, lots of clean power. Once again, same build quality. I mean, just a fantastic amp, but you would think, okay, maybe this is for, not really a 2-channel setup. This is more, like a second zone or something, but not necessarily true. You could definitely do that. And that was, I think, one of the first ones you came out in that series that had that crossover ability.
Yes.
So that was definitely a big kind of step forward for Parasound, I think.
That's right. So at 350 watts per channel, it's a very high power amplifier. And there are some applications, of course, where really that's exactly the thing that you need. It's just a really high powered and yet running pretty cool, because it is rather than a Class A/B amplifier, it's a Class D amplifier. So
we got a few questions, and one super chat by Ahmad. Thank you for the support. And the question is about 240 volts.
Yeah, so we have, because I do the export side of the business for Parasound as well, we have, not in every single export country, of course, but in a lot of export countries now, we've got a local distributor or representative who handles our products in 230 volt / 240 volt. Ahmad might be in England possibly if it's 240 volt. There's only a few places that go up to 240, but England is kind of notorious for having the voltage up that high. So so we do definitely make amplifiers, not in the standard 110, which we use here in America, but in the 230 and 240 volt sector as well.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. And by the way, Matt did say thanks for answering his question.
You're welcome, Matt.
Super chat. So thank you, Matt, for that. Let's see. I think Straight 6 Supra.
Okay.
We've got a question about Parasound amps. What would be the ideal amp for my home theater setup? I plan on running 2 JTR 212 noise
Noise.
towers,
Mhm.
and 210 RM center. Running JC1 Plus is out of my price range.
Okay. Well, so that's a great question. I think the first decision to make really is how many of the channels do you want to run by Parasound? Let me just kind of take a step back for a quick second and say that I think one of the really great uses of Parasound is that the manufacturers, the big manufacturers from Asia, like Yamaha, Marantz, Integra, any of those guys, they all have a tremendous capability that we as a smaller company don't have. They've all got a lot of digital engineering. So when we listen to home theater, what we're really listening to are some incredibly sophisticated algorithms that are directing, let's say the car going from the left to the right, or the horses are kind of going past you and you're literally hearing the horses go from front to back. The algorithms you have to write to get that kind of digital steering are not for the faint of heart, okay? And HDMI engineering in particular is its own whole other thing. So those companies that are much, much bigger than Parasound and have a really deep shelf of digital engineering that can create those kinds of products so that the steering is absolutely pristine. We love the fact that those guys are in business, because if you then choose to take one of their products and made it to, let's say, a Parasound 2-channel amp for just the front 2 channels, or a 3-channel amp like our A31, or a 5-channel amp, or it sounds like, Chana, in your case, you're using actually 2 of our 5-channel amps, so you've got multiple channels going. We think that's fabulous, because what most of those home theater receivers can't do is there's no way that you can take that physical box size and cram into it all the things that we put into a high-end amplifier. So if you have a moment, Chana, to, like, I think on our website, either the JC5 or I know for sure the JC1 Plus, we have an interior view where you can look, kind of the helicopter view down into the amplifier.
Yeah, that big massive turtle.
Yeah.
Things
Okay,
a
perfect.
beast. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thank you so much, Shauna, for doing that. When you look inside this thing, you start to realize that there's no way that a home theater receiver can have all the incredible, sophisticated electronics that it has in it and have all the room to just cram the things you need to cram in there.
HDMI switcher, the decoders, all that stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. So, we take a look here and you see, for example, that's about a 30-pound transformer, but literally the thing that's creating the main power for it. And what you can't quite see from this angle is we have 2 other transformers in there. We've got a transformer that's really just dedicated to the input stage of the amplifier. And people don't seem to talk about the input stage of the amplifier much. I never did until we started shipping this JC1 Plus. And then we've got a 3rd transformer as well, just to do the bypass, the protection functions and so forth. So there you go. From this angle, you can see right in the front of the product. So, there's the big blue transformer, and right there's the one for the input stage. There you go. And then just on the other side of it, that little yellow guy, there you go. So 3 transformers in one box. And this is where I think it's just such a beautiful thing to take one of the home theater receivers from those well-esteemed brands, Sony and all those guys, and have that do all the digital steering in your system, but now bring a Parasound amplifier or 2 or however many you need to get done what you need to get done. I think, for example, the A31, where you've got left, center, and right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a real typical application, because
250 watts.
Yeah, it's a brute.
Yeah, that is a beast right there.
So I'm laughing at Kanga Empire says, "Damn boy, she thick." That's how we talk about amplifiers on this on Daily Hi-Fi.
There you go. Damn boy, she thick.
Notice what else is on the back of that. 2 handles.
Right.
Yeah. But you know what? I had I have the 51, so that's the
5-channel.
The 5-channel version of this. It also has handles, but I'm telling you right now, it doesn't help. It really doesn't help, because it's all front loaded and heavy. I mean, here's the 5-channel version.
Right.
Like, it's just, there's like, I mean, I tried. It took a while to get it up on my table when I was shooting the video. And honestly, I do not want to take my rack apart, because I'll have to pretty much get back behind my TVs where my rack is. So it's a very tight spot. So getting it in there was a chore. It's not leaving. It's just staying there and things not going anywhere.
Here I was thinking that John Curl was so that you could like just literally kind of
No,
work
it's
out with these
literally
things.
curl it.
You know, it's funny because my buddy over there, Just Audio Lenny, he just did a video recently where he, you know, I think he used a Parasound amp to see if he could hear a difference between using, you know, just the built-in, I think it was a Yamaha amplifier for home theater, and then he added a Parasound amp, and he's like, I could totally tell a difference. So,
Yeah, and that's where I was saying a moment ago about how it's a tremendous best of both worlds kind of a scenario when you take their home theater receiver, and you can still, of course, use some of those channels to power the other speakers.
I think that's what Chana does with his setup, right?
I did before I had the 2 amps. So now all 10 channels of my 10.1 Oro or my 9-channel Atmos is all externally powered. But before I just had the A52 Plus. My 5 ear level speakers were powered by the Parasound, and then the 4 height channels or 5 height channels, depending on what I was watching, was powered by the Denon. And I see questions in here a lot. Like people are like, well, what does Parasound have that's a 3-channel amplifier? It's the A31. It's 250 watts per channel into 8 ohms, and it's really big. It's also fairly expensive. If you wanted to go down to the A52 Plus, which is a 5-channel amplifier, it's less expensive, and you can still just run only 3 channels on there, and it'll be like more wattage than you were running the 2 channels.
Hey, Joe, just let Richard and Phil know that I think I can make a little bit of room here. If you want to send an app, just I'll clear out some stuff just for you guys. Don't worry, I got you.
It sounded like a plug for free goods.
Yeah. Well,
Joe, one thing that I think is interesting about Parasound, a lot of companies try to honestly get into too many different markets, you know, instead of specializing in what they do best. And I think that's one of the greatness about Parasound is that you have kind of stayed in that lane. It's like we found what we are incredible at, and we're just going to continue to do that, you know. And like I said, you don't see that a lot in a lot of companies. A lot of companies they're doing good in this, and they're like, oh, wait a minute, now there's a market over here, let's go after that. And then they go after this, and eventually, honestly, it starts.
They dilute it, right?
Yeah, and it starts affecting those other products. And so I think your business model of just, you know, focusing on incredible amplification, I think that's definitely a testament to Parasound's legacy.
Well, thank you, Mike. And in truth, that was a lesson that we had to stub our toes a couple times, I think, to learn, because we did have for a while, you know, tuner, CD player. We were manufacturing sources as well. But you know, it really proved out. All manufacturers, of course, will look at the sales figures every month. Okay, we're selling a lot of these, a pretty good number of these, not so many of these. And some of those products, you could just tell by the sales figures that it wasn't really our market. And so I think there is really something to be said in specializing in the things that you're good at. And I see a request about this. I don't know, does one of you guys want to read the...
I request from most owners, Parasound really needs to put a switch on the back to turn off all LEDs on the front. So this is for dark room view. Where's his other? Here it is. I have to have my foot in a specific angle to block the LED when listening in a dark room. So it's basically the light emitting from the front of the amplifier. They want a way to get rid of that.
Well, so 2 things I would say, 38 Special. First off, of course, thank you very much for asking the question. The first thing I would say is we now are starting to put dimming switches to the things that we're doing with LED. And I think in the future, you'll probably see that as well. The second thing is, and this, you know, may sound like a really, well, it is a really simple fix. You know, the black electrical tape that growing up in Chicago,
that's true.
we put around the hockey sticks. You know, if you just put a little, you know, tiny piece of black electrical tape over the LED, you don't have to deal with it. Now, obviously, that's not an ideal solution, but it will actually, you know, solve the problem for you if you are bothered by the light.
It almost seems weird putting electrical tape on like this sweet Parasound amp. You're like,
I know.
It works. It's functional, but definitely not desired probably most, because, you know, your equipment is kind of one that you want to present. Like you want it to be out in front. You want people to see it. You want to put it behind, you know, a cabinet. You want it to put it on display because it truly can be a showpiece. John's got his behind the TV.
And its front is facing the wall because I have to access the connection. So like, I don't see it at all.
John's like, I ain't messing with that.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Here's another question from Garrett. I'm sure he saw all the THX branding on the back of those amplifiers. So his question is, what does the THX brand bring for Parasound?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question, actually. So first off, kudos to the guys at THX, because they're really in the 80s, or early 80s, let's say, there were no real standards for what theaters, and remember that THX is a technology that started in the movie theater and then kind of moved into the home situation. The sort of apocryphal story goes that some of the guys who were involved in making the Star Wars movie went to a theater to see it, and they were so underwhelmed by what they heard because there was just this tremendous sense of disappointment that they felt. We spent all this time and energy and technology being able to bring an incredible sounding experience, and here we are in this theater. So maybe it wasn't a real state-of-the-art theater, maybe it was just a little neighborhood movie theater or something, but they felt like, yes, we're getting all the visual that we tried to do in our movie, but we're not coming close to getting the audio. And that's where they really started putting standards to what a reproduced theater would be like. And that's really where, using subwoofers in a large scale way, that really migrated again from the movie theater experience into our current home theaters. Now, of course, home theater users love to get on forums and trade ideas about which subwoofer. I myself worked for Velodyne for 7 years and really enjoyed that experience a ton, by the way. Good subwoofers can make a tremendous difference to the performance either of a home theater system or a two-channel system. In fact, I think a lot of guys shy away from using subwoofers in two-channel, and they shouldn't. If you take the time necessary to blend the subwoofers in so you can't tell where the bass is coming from, subwoofers in a two-channel system can be fabulous. So now back to Garrett's question, what does the THX brand bring for Parasound? If you're manufacturing a high-end amplifier like we are, and you send the amplifier to THX and they do in fact, grant you the THX logo, you pay a little something for that, obviously, but you also are able to now put a standard on there that says, maybe in the same way that if you wanted someone to do your taxes and you saw that they're a CPA, that they've passed, the CPA review. Well, that consists of 4 parts, or at least it did until fairly recently. Maybe it's more now, but you say, okay, this person has passed all 4 parts of the CPA review. I'll let them do the audit for my company's books. It's kind of the same thing with the THX testing. It verifies that this amplifier is capable of doing all the things that are really necessary to give you a great sound quality.
Now, you probably have a lot of amps that aren't. Are all your amps THX certified, or just some of them?
No, they're not.
Yeah,
that's right. And a part of that, of course, really is a financial decision, because the THX logo, it's a very valuable service THX offers, but you do have to pay for it. So that's going to add something to the cost of the product. So,
and I think one thing that some don't realize is that you can have an amplifier that meets THX certification, but you didn't necessarily pay the licensing for that particular product.
Right.
Like you said, thus saving some money for the consumer and for the company.
Right. One of the most serious questions we ask ourselves at Parasound about every product we make is, are we making the right choices for this price point?
Gotcha.
Is there something else we should be doing at this price point to make this the best value that we can for the money? So
there's a very important question I see from Red Car Guy.
I saw that too.
I was like, what does that even mean? Mike,
you need to loosen up, Mike.
I guess, man, I'm just hanging out, man, enjoying it.
I think it's your angle. He doesn't like your camera angle right there. You look like you're looking down on people.
Hey.
I've got to figure out where I can get my camera, because I got this big 32-inch monitor, and so if I put it up high, then it looks weird looking down. So.
Well, Mike, my camera is actually right in front of the monitor, and then I just moved the window up, so it's just it's right here. There's a camera.
Yeah,
monitor's right there.
So Joe, now that you see what kind of people we have a good mix of people
this
in
is
here.
Our guest, man.
Are you ready to take some calls?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, see, he's ready for anything. You might get a question just like that. Yep, you never know.
And
Yeah,
while the
be ready for
call,
anything.
let me put up the call situation. But right before I do that, how much does XLR connection really matter over RCA when only going a couple of feet?
Good question.
Okay.
Thank you, Rockhurst. That's a great question. So there's kind of two answers to it. One is that obviously XLR is the method of connection of choice in the professional world, because you may be running, 150 feet from the stage back to the mixing board, that kind of thing. And obviously the benefit of XLR cables versus a standard RCA cable is you get better immunity from noise and those sorts of things. Having said that, so really, if you're only running a couple feet, you don't have any, like a 1 meter cable, a 3-foot cable, basically, you don't have any real worry at all that you're going to be picking up hum and noise and those kinds of things in the cable because the distance is so short. Having said that, in most of our products, you're going to get, not all, but most of our products, you're going to get about a 6 dB bump in output if you're using an XLR connection versus the RCA connection. So the ability to get a little bit more out of the product by using an XLR cable rather than an RCA cable is something that you might want to take a look at.
Yeah.
And why is that? Why is that?
It's a technical thing having to do with how the cable is laid out internally, and
Balance versus it has 3 cables inside there, whereas the unbalanced has 2.
Yep.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. So
And then so then and even though some say they're XLR, some of the connections are actually not balanced on some amplifiers. So if it's not truly a balanced port on the back of that amplifier, or what is it, pre-pro, then you're not getting the benefit of the XLR being a balanced cable. So that's also something you need to look into. And I've heard that less expensive amplifiers sometimes have an XLR connection, but it's not necessarily balanced.
Kind of cheap out on that.
Right. And I think this is where, we love when consumers write us, email us, call us, and ask questions. And I just saw that one from my 2 cats.
Could be.
But this is really where we love answering questions for consumers, but we really try to always pair them up with a local Parasound dealer, because that local dealer is going to have all kinds of insight about, at this kind of price range, take this cable. If you want to step up to that kind of price range, use this cable, and that sort of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, very good.
Now, you mentioned Chicago. This is not a technical question, but have you watched The Last Dance?
I have not watched The Last Dance, but I don't live in Chicago now. In 2011, when Velodyne kind of went in a completely different direction and we all lost our jobs, I moved here to Baltimore on the East Coast to work for the guys at Definitive Technology. Probably some of your listeners own Definitive Technology speakers.
Sure.
And had a lot of fun working for them, and then did a few other things in the industry and wound up here at Parasound. So, but I am from Chicago originally, and I miss my hometown.
Well, you definitely got to check that out. It's an awesome documentary.
Okay.
We have somebody. You're on the air. What's your name? What's your question?
Where are you calling from?
Yeah.
Hey, I'm calling from the San Francisco Bay Area.
Oh, cool.
Good.
You're right next to Joe.
Oh yeah, that's right. Parasound is located in this location.
Yeah, I'm in Baltimore.
But I just wanted to compliment you guys. You're finally getting some serious equipment on your podcast.
Serious.
So your equipment now.
So I'm an audiophile for like 30 years, and I've always owned a separate component. I've never owned a receiver, and because of the fact that receivers are mainly designed for small areas, they can't fill a room with sound because of the fact that they're don't have enough current to deliver to the speaker system in all cases. So it's my opinion that if you're going to have a serious home theater, you're going to need a lot of current delivered to your speaker system. Not necessarily for the volume, but to prevent the amplifier from going into clipping.
Right.
Yeah, And then I think also for the dynamics, like large dynamic shifts, going from super quiet to super loud.
Well, that's what I'm talking about when I say the dynamic range of the amplifier is going to be a lot higher when you have more current delivered to your speakers.
Yeah, and when with all these things, you're getting like 9 channels, 7 channels, 11 channels, 16 channels, 32 channels. Yeah, that's just it gets pretty out of hand. You're like, oh man, it's rated for 150 watts times 2.
Well, usually if you see a receiver and you read the specs on it, you're going to see that it's mainly that one channel is driven at the full power output. So you're not going to get a lot of current from a small receiver. In other words, you have to have heavy transformers inside the unit to have any chance of delivering full range power in the, say, all 5 channels.
Right. And then on top of that, like what you mentioned earlier, you have to do all the HDMI switching, decoding. There's all that stuff too.
I mean, to be fair, I would say that's a blanket statement because there are AVRs out there, that are pretty beefy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're also pretty huge and they're also pretty expensive. So I wouldn't say all, but maybe some of the lower end ones, expensive ones.
In general, what I'm saying is in general, in other words, you get what you pay for, which is really what it comes down to.
Right.
So you're not going to get a cheap receiver to deliver the same current as a more expensive one.
Well, you wouldn't expect that.
If I can maybe tell a quick little story from my audio pass that sort of supports what the caller is saying. When I was at Polk Audio in 1989, 90, 1991, we had, of course, a listening room, and they had about $10,000 worth of high-end electronics because, Polk was making some very high-end speakers back then. But Polk also was very well known for good product in the affordable ranges. We had this $200 pair of speakers that sold really very well, very popular for that money. And I went into the listening room one day, and just kind of for fun, the engineers had hooked up those $200 speakers to this massive rack of, I think it was threshold amplifiers at the time, power cables that were this big and all that sort of thing. And I was amazed at how incredible that $200 pair of speakers sounded. And so what your caller is getting at, I think, is there's a saying that Richard likes to say a lot of times, and that's that you may not know just how good the speakers that you have at home, how good those speakers really are if you haven't hooked them up with a really good power source, because your caller is correct that, if you deliver a lot of current when it's needed, you really can tell the difference. Yeah, I wish you guys could have heard those. That $200 pair of speakers blew my mind how good it sounded.
Did you have a question, caller?
No, I don't have a question for you, but I love your podcast. It's really great.
Awesome.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We appreciate
Thanks for
it.
calling.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Take care.
And the podcast is a lot of fun, actually. I mean, I think you guys are doing a great job. The way that you play off each other as well. You don't step on each other's toes all the time, which sometimes you see with people.
Oh man, you just need to hang out more often. Here's a great comment from Miguel. He says, "Thanks for taking or for saying that people need subwoofers in their 2-channel setup. That's awesome." Because I think that is kind of a lot of audiophile guys tend to think that like pure audio should be just 2-channel full range. I'm of the opinion that I think a subwoofer can complement any setup, when it's properly dialed in. But that's just my opinion.
I feel like Rel has that market. You know what I mean? Like I've seen that the audiophile guys kind of embrace that brand for whatever reason.
Sure.
So good on them.
Yeah, and I would just say it ever so slightly differently than how Miguel said it. I wouldn't say that people need subwoofers in their 2 channels.
They can benefit from it.
It really can, and especially, Mike, as you say, if it's properly blended in. Because if it's not, and you're aware of the fact, there's that box over there that's pounding away, that's going to sound ridiculous.
Yep.
Got to blend.
Got to do it.
DSP is a good thing when it comes to subwoofers. That's what I think.
There you go.
What else you guys got?
You want to do another call? Let's put the
Yeah,
call banner.
yeah.
Yeah,
We'll keep it
that was a
open.
short. That was actually a short call. Usually they're like 15
Like
minutes
10
long.
minutes. Just like, where
What?
are they going with it?
I know Joe can handle it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
handle
yeah, he's
anything.
good. He's
Thank
good
you
to
for
go.
saying so.
Another thing I want to touch on, or I will touch on, as someone was asking about how does THX benefit the brand. I think overall, whenever I reach out to companies and like speaker companies, and I was like, hey, can you send over, some speakers for me to review, especially M&K THX company. They were like, oh, what do you have to power it? I'm like, I have a Parasound. They're like, yeah, sure. Like there was no question, no hesitation. Yeah, okay, yeah. Which ones do you want? It was fantastic. Got a caller?
Yes, caller, you are on the air.
Yeah. Okay.
What's your name? Where are you calling from?
I'm Matt, and I'm calling from Massachusetts.
Hey, Matt, good to have you on the show, man. What's your question?
Yeah, thanks. I'm confused here because I'm in front of the computer and I'm seeing you in front of me, so I'm going to go over there.
Yeah, just mute that one.
Yeah, I'm the guy that wrote the first question about the John Curl and the A52 Plus and the Class A amp. And what was happening when you were talking, when he was answering me, there was all kinds of weird kind of double exposure on my call, so I couldn't understand quite what he was saying.
Okay.
I really want to buy a Parasound, and I got not a small room, but I'm in a condo. I go up about 75 dB, is about as high as I can go.
Mm-hmm.
I'm powering my Polk LSIM 707s and 706 with a Yamaha 2080. But which one of these should I buy? I'm totally at your mercy. You tell me what to get, I'll get, because I love the Parasound. You guys have flipped me over on this Youthman and Techno with your reviews. So is A52 Plus a good one?
Yes.
That's one I should get.
I mean, it depends on what you want to power, but I think at the price level for performance, you can't go wrong with that. You can run a 2-channel, you can run a 3-channel, you can run all your 5 ear level speaker. I don't know how many speakers you're trying to run, but you have flexibility in that aspect. So if you just wanted to do your front stage externally powered, you can do so. And when you do 2-channel listening, boom, it's right in there.
You can use it to Biamp. A lot of different configurations you can use it for.
Yeah.
And we're not talking just loudness here. We're talking a cleaning up of my whole sound, even at lower levels, correct?
Of course, yeah.
Right.
And then there's a couple of tricks. Like some people say, well, they always ask, do I run my room correction after I add the amp? And I've done it both ways. And if you want a little trick, you can just connect it up to your 5 ear level speakers or your 3 speakers or your 2 speakers, not run room correction, and you'll get a lot more volume. But if you want a balanced system, connect it up and then run your room correction again so that the whole system is balanced with your new power. Yeah.
That's great because if I go any more volume, I'm going to lose a house. So I don't want to get kicked out.
One thing I noticed that when I added the A52 Plus to the my clip speakers, the RF73s, even at lower volume, you're going to get more bottom end. It's very, very controlled. So you don't necessarily have to be just like cranking it like you would on a receiver to be able to get those, woofers really, really moving. So I think in that respect, definitely you can get, even good, solid, clear, tight bass, from, even at lower volumes. It doesn't have to be huge volumes.
Great, because when I bought those LSIM 707s, and people were telling me, you really got to power those. Those things you're not gonna make it on your Yamaha. And they seem okay, but at the same time, I want to see what the next level is.
Sure.
That's what this is all about, right?
And Matt, you said that you watched some of Techno Dad and Youthman's videos, and that kind of nudged you towards that direction.
Oh, absolutely. They were great. The Parasound A52, the both of you guys, when you did those reviews, I was totally rooted to the screen. I said, I got to get this.
Well, it's good. It's good, Joe, that you guys didn't send me one yet. Otherwise, Matt would already have one at his house.
No. There you go. Well, remember what we talked about? Everybody saving up, he's putting some money aside a little bit here and there.
He's been waiting. So
that's what he's doing.
So Matt, I'm gonna drop a link to Paducah Home Theater. Contact them. They got the best. They got the best Parasound pricing around. That's on my. Whose channel are you watching on? Are you watching on everyone's channel or
Yeah,
Mike's?
I went on to that the one you told us to try there. The
Daily
Hi-Fi.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's what got me the echo. I had to get off that. For some reason, it was double echoing all over the place. I couldn't understand anything. So I shut off my browser and came back up on, I think I'm on Technos right now.
I think
and
you
I'm
had
fine.
two tabs
The sound
open,
is
maybe.
fine.
Yeah, it could have been.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, probably had two
All right.
tabs
Well,
open.
I'll just have this
great.
go out on all of them. So the link will be on all channels. But yeah, contact Paducah Home Theater for the best Parasound pricing.
Matt, one thing
I
I
will
might
do, and thanks you guys.
Matt,
So, Matt-
Joe has a comment for you.
Matt, I just want to interject one thing real quickly. That if your main, I love the 707s, by the way. That's, oftentimes people will ask me, what do you think of this or that product? And sometimes I don't have any familiarity with it, so I can't even comment. But I think the 707 is a wonderful speaker. But if your main interest really is left, center, right, then you want to take a real look at our A31, because that's a 3-channel amplifier for LCR, but it would be even more powerful and, even more powerful, and might be even a better bet for you, because, really, as Mike was pointing out a little while ago, it's in the bottom end that the amplifier can make a huge difference, not just an overall volume level, but really being able to deliver the current to get the bass frequency sounding right. So if your main interest is in left, center, right, I'd strongly recommend the A31.
Yeah,
what is roughly
it's
the
home
difference in
theater,
pricing?
It's home
Sorry?
theater. Okay.
I said it's home theater that I'm going towards. So, I could let the rest of them be powered by the Yamaha and just do the front 3. I have to think about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Joe, what's the difference in the price range in those two amplifiers?
I think it's $500.
Okay, so
Yeah.
they're pretty similar.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah, that's not an issue. It's just getting the best sound for my buck. That's all.
Sure.
Okay.
There you go.
Yep.
I think with 240 watts per channel, that's a lot. I mean,
Yeah, that might blow me right out of my condo. So I don't know.
I don't think you would connect the 52 plus and go, man, I wish I had a little bit more.
No, you won't. You'd just be like, wow. With
No.
either of the two,
Yeah.
either way, you can't go wrong
I don't
either
think
way.
you would.
Yeah.
Well, cool,
Okay,
Matt.
thank you very much,
Appreciate
guys.
the call, man. Appreciate the
Take
call.
care.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Take
You
care.
too. Bye now. Look at that. Does Parasound? Whew. Well, great
Yeah,
call. Great call.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
So Rockhurst asked, does Parasound worry about losing sales because they are only a dealer type seller, not a direct seller?
So that's a great question, Rockhurst. Thank you for asking it. I really kind of first became aware of people who were doing factory direct sales as opposed to using, dealers and a dealer network the traditional way, when I was at Parasound and we saw what the guys over at SVS are doing. And now I've got some friends who work at SVS. So there's, I think, a lot to be said for the consumer direct model, but I think there's a lot to be said for the model that we're using as well with traditional dealers. We certainly have some folks who can sell our products over the internet. So as you guys all know, lots and lots of customers have virtually stopped doing any kind of shopping except for getting on the keyboard and, oh, that looks good, I'll take one of those. And we want to be able to serve that kind of a customer. So we've got folks who can sell over the internet, and we love that type of approach. But I think that there is also, specifically in the audio business, a real benefit to being able to walk into a dealer and say, okay, what about this speaker versus that speaker? What if I take the money that I was going to dedicate to a better speaker and instead get a subwoofer? What about getting a better amplifier? If I listen to this Yamaha receiver and then I listen to the Yamaha receiver with an A51 or an A52 hooked up to it, can I really hear the difference? I think there's a tremendous benefit to be gained from that type of an approach. So we're not really worried about losing sales to internet direct dealers because our products can be purchased on the internet. But at least at this point in history, we sure believe in the ability of going into a local dealer and really being able to tap into their expertise. I think even more so now that we're in the home theater industry, home theater part of the business, because there are so many different ways that you can take a chunk of your budget and spend it over here instead of over there. And when you're able to physically be in the room with the products and really enjoying them, that's a big advantage. So we like being able to have our customers tap into both approaches.
I think it's tough right now just because, people aren't going out like we're
Don't go
saying.
anywhere.
But I think you said, where are you now, Joe? Baltimore?
I'm in Baltimore, yes.
So you're right there near Just Audio.
Oh
near
yeah,
Lenny and them.
Just Audio is maybe a half an hour from here, and in fact, in 2 weeks I'm supposed to go over and shoot some video stuff with Lenny. So he's a great guy.
Yeah, and they carry Parasound gear.
They do.
Yep.
They do. They're an interesting shop in that they were for so many years are just a repair shop, and they started realizing customers would ask them, "Well, do you have any products that have been repaired that you sell?" And then they started saying, "Well, what if we were to carry some real brands like Parasound and so forth that are, they essentially turned themselves into a retail shop with, this deep bench worth of repairing that they do." So. And they're all really nice people in that building. It was just a pleasure to be over there and work with them a little bit when I was over there a couple months ago.
Yeah. So there's a question about Hi-Fi Summit here. Just Audio, they will be at the Hi-Fi Summit also. Still figuring out what they're going to do for a giveaway, so we'll figure that out. But Fred
I think
here
you said something about like 6 JC1s or something.
yeah, they're going to send out 6 of them. Fred asks, how's the Hi-Fi Summit giveaway going to be? Is it going to be like a random winner from buying tickets? No, so it is going to be a random winner, but each company determines what their giveaway is and how they're going to run their giveaway, when the start and end dates are. But
it's just going to be hosted on our platform.
One thing is for sure is that you are not allowed to do a lottery. Only the government's allowed to do a lottery. So we can't say, hey, you have to buy something in order to enter. So it's no purchase necessary. But it will be hosted on the Hi-Fi Summit. But like I said previously, the Hi-Fi Summit, 5 days. Right now, if you buy before June, it's $24, $49 after that.
One week
left. But after the 5 days, it's open to everybody, so you'll be able to see what's going on the website. But you just might not be able to do some of the live interaction. Yeah. So there are things you're gonna miss.
And of course, the after party DJ'd by me.
He's gonna be rocking it. I hear he's pretty good. So Joe, Chana is gonna be doing some DJing live for us.
Cool.
During the event, so it's gonna be good.
That's gonna be great.
Does Parasound have a showroom? So who's this? John Bustos.
Does
Parasound have a showroom open to the public for those who live locally? I'd like to demo some of their new classic products. Thanks for the awesome podcast.
So, and thank you 3 again for the awesome podcast. I'm having fun being on this.
Awesome, John, great.
Oh, absolutely. John, it sounds like you're probably in the San Francisco area because, of course, our home base is in San Francisco. We actually don't have a demo/showroom kind of a room set up in that facility at this point, simply because of the way it's configured. It is basically a warehouse that they sort of built an office space above it. So there's kind of a second floor, if you will, where there's, some desks and some phones and so forth. But we don't have really a showroom open to the public there. But we do have a dealer locator on our website. So depending on exactly where you're at, you can just go to, www.parasound.com. And then in the upper right-hand section, there's a little banner that talks about finding a dealer. It says authorized dealers. And if you click that, you can type in your zip code and it will direct you to the nearest dealer.
You're all over the place. Look at you.
Yeah, we're lucky to have a nice dealer network set up. And, this kind of goes back to the last question that we had about if you have an opportunity to go to a local dealer and really audition some products, I think it can be very helpful in the buying experience.
Definitely. And just like you were saying earlier, when people you have like a pair of $200 speakers and then you put a lot of current through it, you're like, whoa, what's going on here? So it's definitely cool if people can experience that. Yeah, so sure. It is tough in these times to get somewhere, but maybe once we're in stage 3 or stage 4 and things are lifted, you can kind of go experience it, because you do have to experience it. And then I feel like I'm super lucky. What's up, D-Tasca? What's going on? I'm super lucky that I started this YouTube channel, because I actually have the opportunity for people to send me stuff, and then I can actually try them out and be like, oh, this is great. Oh, this is not so great. I thought it looked good on paper, but I didn't really like it. So, definitely fortunate in that way.
Yeah, cool. I agree.
Commander Russell says, "Why doesn't Parasound go direct?" I think you kind of answered that.
Are you guys
partially.
are you guys a fairly small company?
Parasound is a fairly small company compared to some of the big giants out there in the industry, and we've kind of got this nice little niche that we've got for ourselves of somebody who wants a better product but doesn't necessarily have the budget for the absolute best, absolute top shelf thing that's out there, and wants to get as close as they can for the money that they do have to spend. So we do have a nice little niche that we've carved out for ourselves, but we're not some sort of an industry giant with hundreds and hundreds of engineers, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Kanga says to Joe Finn, "What system Parasound with what speakers surprised you the most?" I mean, for me, I was surprised with the Parasound that you had there, the one that new Classic 1200 was it, and the boot cart setup that you had. I was like, "What the heck?" Little bookshelf speakers. That was kind of crazy. But what do you? How about you?
No, that was a great sounding system. We had the new Classic 200, which is a $1,200 integrated amplifier, running the boot carts, which were, I think they retailed for about $1,600 to $1,800 for the pair, if I remember correctly. This was a year ago at Expona, and that did sound really good. But I have to say that the setup that we had at Rocky Mountain Audio Fest this year just sounded mind blowing.
That with the Tectons?
Yeah, the huge
Tectons. That's right.
Those are huge.
That's right. So there were $4,500 a pair for these Tecton Moab. Is the MOAB is the name of the speaker that we had, and it blew my mind how good it was. And we kept hearing, people would they kept coming back. We would have people that came in on Friday come back on Saturday, and sometimes come back on Sunday again, just so that they could. There you go. There's the Tecton Moabs, just so they could hear what a $7,500 system, including the rack and everything, yeah. So it was mind blowing how good that was. And I would say that Parasound system for me was the most surprising that I've ever heard. It was just ridiculous how good it sounded.
Look, they got that video on their site, the video of our match.
Yes.
With the,
yes.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Great stuff. I know there's a question here that I could probably answer, but let's have Joe answer it. Will Parasound make a 7-channel amp?
I think we'd love to make a 7-channel amplifier, because obviously, 5-channel is still, a lot of people buy 5-channel, but 7-channel is becoming more and more popular. One of the things that you do start to run into, of course, is the issue of what can you put into this physical chassis, this actual cabinet that you're dealing with. And so, a sort of a parallel question, and again, thank you, Agsman71 for asking, but a sort of a parallel question people ask us sometimes: are you planning on upgrading your A51 and A31 to plus versions anytime soon? And the answer is no, simply because that physical cabinet, there's really not more that we can do with those cabinets to upgrade the sound. So as much as we'd like to have a 7-channel amp, I would tell you that right now we don't have a 7-channel amp on the drawing board, at least not one that I've been made aware of. The engineers might be doing something, kind of in the back room, but it's really just a matter of how do you physically put everything into the box. Having said that, of course, you can always buy a 5-channel Parasound home theater amp and then pair it up with any of our 2-channel amps, of which we have plenty, and now you've got 7 channels.
Yeah. I had asked Richard this before already, and same thing. It's just you physically you can't put all that into the same like widths of the whatever your TV rack or your TV stand.
And having said that, though, Class D does open up some options that you don't have in the Class AB realm in terms of space saving. So it's entirely possible that at some point in the future we might have a 7-channel amp, but nothing on the drawing board right now that I'm aware of.
So you could take a Class D amplifier and put it in a bigger chassis and get more channels.
Well, with Class D, you don't need as much physical space to create. You don't need the massive transformer and so forth. So that's really why that new Classic 200 is just a 1U, very slim, 1U high product. So, yeah.
Got a good question here from, is it Vashal27? Says, I have a question about watts. How important are they, and how many do we really need? My understanding is using efficient speakers we don't really need a lot of watts. And then he has a couple other thoughts. He says estimation is that we're only using about 10-ish watts when listening to music at normal levels, unless you want to go, kind of crazy and go deaf. And then he mentions another company, First Watt Company, creates amps with about 30 amps, and they're fantastic. Is it better to have a lot of watts or fewer, but quality watts?
So there's a lot of questions going on there. Let's try to parse out.
And then he ends it up with this one. I have
Oh, I didn't
Rotel
see
right
that one.
now, but I'm looking for Parasound.
Oh, there you go.
There you go.
Yeah. So the question actually calls up several different things that we have to think about when we're thinking about amplification. So the first is, how efficient is the speaker?
Mm-hmm.
So if we have a speaker, let's say that we're auditioning, and let's just say it's 91 dB efficient, 1 watt, 1 meter. And we're comparing it against another speaker that's, let's say, 85 dB, 1 watt, 1 meter. Well, if we take the amplifier, the preamp, I guess I should say, and we turn the volume level up, maybe a quarter of the way, that 91 dB level speaker is going to be a lot louder with the same input than the 85 dB one. So the first element in all this, of course, is how efficient is the speaker that you have. Then secondly, of course, how big is the room that you're filling up? So one of my relatives lives in Chicago, has really a huge basement with high ceilings and so forth. Well, the more room that you have, the more room that you're trying to fill up, obviously the more output that you're going to need. So the size of the room, the efficiency of the speaker, but there's a third thing too, and that's that the wattage rating itself can be a little bit deceptive, and I'll try to explain what I mean. If you see, let's say, an amplifier and it's rated at, just to pick a number, it's rated at 100 watts at 8 ohms. Well, typically that's measured by taking an 8 ohm load resistor, attaching it to the amplifier outputs, and see what happens. The problem there, of course, is nobody on this call ever listens to an 8 ohm load resistor. Your loudspeakers are always going to be presenting this fluctuating load to the amplifier. So how well does the amplifier deliver current into a challenging load? And by challenging, I mean, of course, the more that you drop the impedance, you get down around 2 ohms. Now you're really stressing the amplifier, and you're really taxing its ability to deliver current. So rather than directly answer the question of how many watts do you need, I would say that wattage, in a sense, is very much secondary in my mind to what is the current delivering capability of the amplifier, and how stable is the amplifier into challenging impedance loads. But certainly one of the things that our not caller, but our listener has pointed out is that with most of the speakers that are out there, if you're actually listening with 10 watts of output, that could be really loud depending on what size of the room you're in. Mm-hmm. So that kind of, in fact, gets almost back to the very first question that we got asked about operating in Class A. If we've got an amplifier that can go Class A all the way up to a 10 watt limit, let's say, you're really listening in pure Class A most of the time that you're listening. So a complicated question, but one I think I'm glad that your listener has asked, because there are so many confusing, or at least potentially confusing, elements to it. And I suppose I would just conclude all this by saying that if you have the Rotel now and you're looking at the Parasound, absolutely, I know what you should do.
He's got the answer.
You should buy 2 Parasounds.
Right. You won't regret it.
That's hilarious.
Man. That's a lot of information there. That's actually really good stuff, though.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that people don't realize, is that impedance lows, that's why they call it nominal impedance on a speaker typically.
That's right.
It just kind of means like an average. It's not going to be 8 ohms. It's not going to be 6 ohms. Certain speakers that I've owned, when you crank, mostly I think it's during the lower frequencies is what causes that lower impedance. So when you've got these really, really big bass heavy tracks, or a song, or maybe a music scale, or like a composition in like a movie, and you've got those really, really deep notes, that speaker is going to be drawing a lot more power from that amplifier. And like you said, if that amplifier doesn't have that beefy, kind of the guts on the internals, it's not going to be able to handle that very, very well. It's not going to sound as clean.
Mm-hmm. You bet.
Yep.
Is there anything else, Joe, that you want to talk about specifically? Thank you for being on. And
Appreciate it,
thanks,
man. This
Joe.
has been great.
Oh, sure. Well, maybe I'll just share with your listeners a story from when I was about 8 years old that really is, in a sense, the reason I'm in this business. The Beatles were kind of happening when I was a young guy, and I had heard, a lot of different music on my parents' Zenith console that they had at home. But when the Beatles came out, I was so amazed. I was shopping with my mom one day. We were at Marshall Fields, which is a, kind of a Nordstrom type thing in Chicago.
Mhm.
And we're going up the escalator, and I thought, oh wow, they've got a live band at the top of the escalator. How cool is that? And I was all excited about seeing these musicians. And we got to the top of the escalator, and there was a Harman Kardon receiver and a pair of KLH speakers. And I just stood there staring at it, stunned, because I thought, wait a minute, we have a stereo at home, and our stereo at home doesn't sound anything like
Right.
this. Why does this sound so much more like live music? And that fascination with how you could have electronic components that really come pretty close to recreating a live music, or as so many of your listeners right now have, they're able to like create and at realistic levels, the movie that they, saw. It's amazing to me and mind-blowing to me and exciting to me how we've got these wonderful components that when you match them up correctly, you can practically have, the latest movie or Frank Zappa or whatever you like in your living room or in your basement. And I think that excitement about what we can do with electronics really has kind of driven, so much of my professional career. And I hope that I never lose that excitement about how great it can sound, because to me, whether you're talking about a $200 pair of speakers driven by a secondhand amp that you bought for $75, at a garage sale, or whether you're listening to a $500,000 worth of gear at Axpona, to me, it really is all about the music and, doing the best you can for the budget that you have with the music. But I hope I never lose that excitement for the musical event or the movie event that's going on.
Well, that's awesome. I'm glad you were on. I know it's Memorial Day, and so
no worries.
yeah, I had a good time, and you're awesome.
Thank you.
Answering questions.
Incredible
You obviously
knowledge.
know your stuff.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Thank you. I totally appreciate that you guys asked me to do this. It was a total pleasure. I really appreciated the different types of questions that your audience asked. I guess I wasn't expecting that we'd have such a wide range of questions, including this last one from the True Voice of Reason.
Yeah, go ahead and answer it.
Sure. True Voice of Reason says, Joe, do you ever do a Don Quixote tilt at windmill? That is, do you ever try something that people say you can't or shouldn't do just to see if you can do it? And my answer to that is absolutely. There's no reason to run a marathon, but when I was young, before I kind of blew my foot up, I ran marathons just to see if I could do it. When I was young and I'd been selling stereos at that point for about 4 years out of college, and I decided to move to Southern California, a number of my friends were asking, well, the economy's not that great right now. What if you don't get a job? Well, wait a second. What is life without adventure?
All right.
So thank you, True Voice of Reason, for asking that question.
Yeah, that he actually asked that a few times. I finally was able to get it in because I was just like, what does this even mean? I'm like, you know what? Screw it. He put it in another 3 times. Let's go.
And then he said, now I know I like you because you're a Zappa fan.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Boy, that was Zappa's total approach to music, is he wrote things to challenge his band to see if they could play them, and some of the Zappa stuff is not as accessible, but when it really worked, Zappa's material was incredible.
Yeah.
Joe, got several questions just real quick. Maybe it's real quick regarding just the different classes. Matt Hilty says, what's Joe's opinion on the sound difference between a Class D and AB Parasound? And then I think there was another one a little bit later.
Yeah. Is there a big benefit going with Class H or Class G versus traditional Class A, B amplifier?
We get those questions like all the time. So kind of what's your take on that as far as some of those different Are there different sound signatures there, or is it more the application?
Sure. So let's maybe just start with a really quick overview of the fact that a Class A amplifier is inherently very inefficient. In fact, amplification in general is inefficient. We're plugging an amp into the wall, right? And what's coming out of that wall socket, that pure current that's coming out of the wall socket, we're trying to translate into acoustical energy when it hits the speakers, because the speakers are moving back and forth. Well, it's an inherently very inefficient process. A lot of what's happening is getting thrown off as heat. And if you have a pure Class A amplifier, those are wonderful. But you notice, I'm sure you guys have noticed, that if you look for the very powerful Class A amplifiers, they tend to be very expensive because it's such an inefficient transfer of energy into electrical energy into acoustical energy.
But they're so expensive because you can cook breakfast on them
That's
as well.
what I was
I mean, clearly.
Microwave at that point. You just lay it on top, cook your eggs.
And they're huge too.
Yeah.
Right. But they can sound absolutely incredible. So, really a Class A/B amplifier or a Class D amplifier or a Class H and some of these other new amplifier technologies that are coming, they're sort of all different ways to try to address the problem of, can we build something that doesn't demand as much physical room, that doesn't create as much heat and throw it off in this inefficient process? That's really what a Class A/B amplifier, and then a Class D takes that to another level. Our again, that new Classic 200 integrated amp that's so darn good for $1,200 runs really kind of cool as a cucumber, unless you're really, hammering it hard. So and maybe, Miguel, this isn't perfectly answering your question, but what all these amplifier technologies are about are ways of trying to research, can we get better sound without having some of the compromises that we would have gotten 30 years ago or 40 years ago, and without, on the other hand, going to a pure Class A amplifier, because pure Class A amplifiers can sound wonderful. But then when you get that big, the 1812 overture or that big thump of bass that is called for by the movie, well, when you run out, that's going to create distortion. So that's why a Class A/B amplifier was created, right? I don't personally know that much about Class H amplifiers or Class G. I've read a little bit about them, but I wouldn't call myself an expert on those amplifier designs. But that's what all of this stuff is about, is trying to become more efficient and give better sound without having a pure Class A amp. And again, having said that, 10 or 15 years ago, I didn't know of any really good sounding Class D modules. Now you can get good Class D modules. So to the guys who are actively researching Class H and so forth, I say, keep going, man. Let's find out where it can take us.
That's good stuff,
cool.
man. Good stuff.
I like Joe.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Not because you guys share the same name.
You do have the best name in hi-fi, Joe, I gotta say.
Whoa. What's going on? We're at 1 hour 30.
Yeah.
Oh, that means it's the end of the podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. We do this every Monday, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We want to give a big shout out to Parasound and, of course, Joe for joining us. Thank you so much, Joe.
Thank you guys for the opportunity.
No problem, man. This was sweet. I think the viewers got a lot out of it. I know we had fun. We always have fun.
Absolutely.
And on behalf of,
I will.
Yeah. You don't. This is what happened last week. Somebody just hit leave. So just don't hit anything. We'll talk after this. But on behalf of myself, Mike, and Joe, you guys, thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Peace.